All right, good afternoon and welcome back to the last day of this spring's NNP Symposium, or welcome back to Central States if you're here in person. All of the talks in this room are part of the NNP Symposium, which started as an online-only educational numismatic conference in 2020. Starting last year, we started working with Central States in the spring to have a hybrid event, and then we're still only virtual in the fall. The symposium itself is sponsored by EPNIS, the Eric P. Newman Numismatic Education Society, so we're very grateful to them for allowing us to put this together. So this is the final talk in the Iowa State Showcase series. This is the first year of a new program that Central States is doing, where they're highlighting one of their member states each year, beginning with Iowa. So we've had 4 different Iowa presentations thus far, and this is the 5th one. We've got Jesse Goplen with German Notgeld, the world's first banknote collecting craze. He is the president of Elkader Auction House, and you may have heard him yesterday with a different talk. I'm told we're in for a much happier, lighter time this time. So I will turn it over to Jesse.
Thank you, guys. You're very kind. I promise this will be lighter. Yes. I'm very excited. I won't be reading anything. And I'm proud to even have a color scheme here to celebrate those wonderful colors we talked about yesterday, the Schwarz-Rot Gold. Remember, those are from Weimar, Germany. And today they use them commemorating, of course, Germany's existence now as a democratic republic again. So we're going to talk about German Notgeld, and specifically, mostly, I want to talk about series Notgeld. And series Notgeld, like the one you can see there, is the colorful, fun stuff. That's what most people think of as Notgeld. That's mostly 1921. And it really was a collecting craze, and in fact, the world's first banknote collecting craze. Thanks to Mitch Ernst once again, right there. We should just all give him a round of applause. What a show! Oh my God. Thank you so much. And I wouldn't be here without him. The Iowa State Showcase wouldn't be happening without him. He's amazing. Thank you to Leonard Augsburger. Amazing what you do with the Newman Numismatic Portal. And I was just talking to him before the talk, and they might actually be interested in digitizing all of these wonderful, one-of-a-kind, perhaps, things that I have, like Courtney Coffing's The Fraktur newsletter. I believe I have a complete set of those. So there could be some new stuff coming to the Newman Numismatic Portal dealing with Notgeld that's very obscure. So I'm excited about that. And thank you again to Leanna. She's been arranging all of this. She's been working so hard. You guys probably aren't seeing all she's doing behind the scenes, but wow, it's amazing. So thank you very much to both of you. And thanks to all the catalog authors. I'm going to talk about Notgeld catalog. So many people don't realize how much work goes into that. It is a huge labor. And yes, it's a labor of love, but they're really dedicating themselves to the hobby for our sake. And thank you to everyone who's here. I'm so grateful to you for coming. I know this is the last day, and a lot of people I've talked to are, on their way out or whatever. So the fact that you made it really means a lot to me. I'm very grateful. All right, so who am I again? I know we did this last time, but I taught German, and while I was there at UC Davis teaching German, I got totally obsessed with Notgeld, at times even maybe too much. And I've been the largest dealer of Notgeld for about the last 10 years, more or less. I have sold over 19,000 items now on eBay, first as Notgeld Market, and now Elkader Auction House. And I am completely obsessed with Notgeld, and I want to make you obsessed. That's my goal. This is a pep talk. You feel it?
Yeah.
This is much happier already, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Awesome. Okay, so a lot of people are not so impressed with Notgeld. I get a lot of this, like when I'm down there on the floor and I'm talking to people like, oh yeah, that's that Notgeld stuff. I don't like that. But it's the funnest stuff in the world to collect. So much of it was preserved in albums. They kept it beautiful. It was originally beautiful. It was designed to target the collector's market. And so you can still get so much of it today, cheap. Some of it has catalog values over 100 years later of like €1, right? And it's some of the best stuff, in my opinion, that you can collect, that you can do cheap. It's fun for kids, and it's where the fun is. So I'm going to bust a few myths here that hopefully might be, like if you're having some blocks that are preventing you from collecting Notgeld, I want to just break through those. And so the first one is this myth that Notgeld is not money. And I've heard this. There are videos out there. You can see this on YouTube. They should be taken down and they should get strikes and all this on YouTube. They say it's called Notgeld. First of all, that's wrong. They say it's called Notgeld because it's not money, and that's not true. Okay, Notgeld is German for emergency money. And I don't care if you say Notgeld, as long, that's fine. It does look like not, as long as you know that it doesn't mean that. Okay. So it comes from die Not. Not is an emergency, and it's a prefix that's added to a lot of things, like an emergency exit is a Notausgang, or just the word for emergency is Notfall, and a fall is a case of something. So a Notfall is like a case of emergency, right? And Notgeld is emergency money. That's all it means, right? And it could be an emergency money, like they use it sometimes in headlines still today in the German press, like, oh, we need emergency money for this. So the German parliament passed an emergency money thing, right? And they'll use the word Notgeld because it just means emergency money. So if it was to mean not money in German, that would be nicht Geld. Nicht means not in German, right? Not is emergency. It is money, emergency money. Now that we got that out of the way, there are about 8 different types of German note, maybe 10, I don't know. See, here's the thing. There's a lot of catalogs. We're going to go through them today, but they're overlapping. And how many actual different types of Notgeld there are, it's up to debate, right? Because, for example, like a lot of people know that there was Notgeld that was made out of silk or linen, and those have their own catalog, but they're also listed in the catalogs for the other types of Notgeld that they overlap with, right? There might be inflation Notgeld that is, made out of silk. So it's in 2 different catalogs. Sometimes they're even in 3 different catalogs, but there are, I think, at least 15 or 16 different categories for catalogs. And, even multiple catalogs for inflation notes. And then sometimes the trillion notes get their own catalog. So if you want, you could say there's 20 or 30. I don't know. It's up to you, but it's around 8 for sure. Major ones. And we're going to go through this. So how it started was World War I, okay? July 28th, 1914, World War I starts. Germany started it. And they went off the gold standard because they needed to raise money. And so what happened to all the silver coins that they were using? It disappeared overnight. People hoarded it, they took it out of circulation, and Notgeld was born. So with no small change, the first Notgeld that came out was the classic Notgeld, the 1914 and 1915 Notgeld. And I have the catalog right here. Ta-da! And this 1914 Notgeld catalog by Diesner, or Dissy, as he signs his emails when he writes me, is very much like if you can see this, it's like wartime script. Sorry, I'm focusing.
Just hold it there for a minute and I'm going to zoom in on it.
Oh, cool. So yeah, just look how, haphazard that is, right? Some of the very first Notgeld came out in August 1st, right? They went off the gold standard July 28th. And by August 1st, some of these notes are dated. And this is a wartime script, like just very hastily produced. But people collected it. And some of the very first banknote catalogs ever produced in the world were for this stuff right here. And it looks like this, for example. Here's actually a very valuable note, which I have downstairs and you can look at, from Danzig, however you want to say that today, Gdansk in Poland. And these are, very, very quickly made. Here's Lutherbach in the Alsace region. Today, this is a French city. That's the thing about the 1914 Notgeld. The German Empire was very far-flung at the beginning of World War I, and some of these are, places like Lithuania or Poland today, or France. Here's another one, not so rare, but that is from Germany. Neustrelitz. So that's 1914 Notgeld, the classic Notgeld. But it continued. They still needed small change. And these are issued mostly by cities. And we have a word here. I'm going to hit you with this. Are you ready? Verkehrsausgaben. Verkehr, it's like circulation. It can mean traffic in a city, but Verkehr is also like commerce. And so Verkehrsausgaben, Ausgabe is an issue. These are circulating issues. And it's also sometimes just called small change notes, Kleingeldscheine. And here's one of the most wonderful catalogs ever. This set right here is 150 euros. You can buy it directly from the author in hardcover, but it is just wonderful. And actually, it's the only catalog that has encased postage and private circulating issues. Very glorious pictures. Sorry, I think I hit the microphone. I hope I didn't blow anybody up at home. But yeah, so it's getting a little more colorful. They were just starting to target the collector's market, but it was still intended to circulate and serve as money. So those are circulating notes. There's that catalog right there. And Tista is the author. Oops. Oh, I don't have my little pointer thing? No, okay. But you can see it down at the bottom. This guy self-published this, Tista, and he has a website, tista.de, where you can buy this, or he even puts it on eBay. And as you can see, there's all kinds of interesting, wonderful stuff. You can see some of the encased postage stamps up there, or just weird kind of reprinted 1 mark notes or whatever it is. Which brings me to another myth, because a lot of people think Notgeld isn't rare because they see so much of it. But in the introduction, the foreword to that catalog, this author argues that these notes are incredibly rare. And some of the notes in that catalog that might only have a catalog value of 100 euros, he says, if they were postage stamps that were that rare, they'd be worth 6 figures. Because, you know, there might only be 1 or 2, and the really rare ones, you'd never see them. I mean, if you really wanted them, you might never find them. They are that rare. It's just that in the aggregate, there are so many different notes. There might be hundreds of thousands of different Notgeld, issues, separate issues altogether. One estimate I saw was 250,000 different notes from 1914 to 1923. I don't know if anyone's really ever counted it, and I don't know if all of it, especially the inflation Notgeld, has ever really been cataloged. So it is actually often incredibly rare. Here we have some examples of the circulating Notgeld. It's, it's nice, but it wasn't the collecting craze yet. It's starting to get there. So Germany really suffered during the war, during World War I. And there was a naval blockade on the North Sea. The British Navy was vastly superior, and they were able to keep all the food and things that Germany needed from coming into the country. And at one point they had slaughtered all the hogs, and so they had to eat the root vegetables that would normally be fed to the hogs. And so here we have a turnip, and you can look this up online. It's called the turnip winter. They had a winter where Germany survived on turnips, and this became a motif on a lot of the Notgeld from Bielefeld. Then we have gross Notgeld. Gross means large, and it was bigger. Gross Notgeld had larger denominations and larger size, and these were issued right as World War I was ending. Gross Notgeld was mostly just October and November of 1918, and this was actually authorized by the German government. These were issued by cities again. Here's one from Eisenach. Is anyone familiar with Eisenach? That's very famous. Martin Luther was at the Wartburg there when he translated the Bible and that kind of thing. Here's another example of the gross Notgeld. And here we have another one from Baden-Baden. Can you guess what German state Baden-Baden is in?
Bavaria?
Baden! Bavaria? Yeah, no, Baden-Baden is in Baden. And here we have Bayreuth. Who is the most famous guy from Bayreuth? Wagner, ganz genau. So what do we have here? The Festspielhaus, where they do the, insanely long productions of The Ring. And of course, this is targeting collectors a little bit, right? But it's also just trying to show off some local pride. And we're moving a little bit closer to what we're actually talking about with the fun stuff. But we also did have Lagergeld. That's another type. Lager is a camp. And POW camps were issued, or POW camps issued money for the Allied prisoners of war, English, French, Russian soldiers. Some of it has other languages on it. And here's a great catalog, also from Tista. So if you're going to spend 150 euros to get the one from Tista, you might as well get this one too while you're at it, because this one's not so bad. I think it's only like 30 euros or so. And it's about the only catalog for the World War I prisoner of war camp money. And here's an example of that. Very nice. That's from Lackstätter Lager. Okay. And now we've arrived at the fun stuff. Are you ready for this? So this is series Notgeld. Series Notgeld was issued in sets and it was targeting a collector's market. This is the colorful, fun stuff that we all know and love. And this is what most people think of when they think of Notgeld. Here's the catalog for that. You can get this set of 2, and these are volumes 1 and 2 of this Deutsches Notgeld series from Goplen Verlag. That's the publisher. And these are $40 on Amazon or wherever you want to get them. These are not bad. And if you just want to collect the colorful notes, that's all you need, right? So these colorful notes were collected and stored in albums. Like you see the album right there. That person's holding an album to keep their Notgeld in, and you might even find album collections still out there that are untouched since the 20s. And that's why so much of it still exists today in uncirculated condition, because people kept it to speculate. They bought it thinking it might be worth more one day. And so many people did that it didn't work out so well, because now there's so much of it. It's kind of the Beanie Baby phenomenon, right? So many people bought so much of it and kept it nice that still today, many notes are only like €1 catalog. Now that's a rarer one. That's more like 15 euros. This one's more like 40 euros. There's still fun stuff and there's rare stuff you can get, but a lot of it has really a lot to tell us about history, and you can learn so much. I've learned so much. Like in my last talk, I feel like I didn't really understand much about how something like the Holocaust could happen even until I started really researching this stuff. Now here we have, for example, the border with the Netherlands. The Netherlands, look at that guy. He's very well fed. And, what's going on with the Germans, though? Im Bier kein Malz. No malt in the beer, no lard on the bread. The cent, which is not their currency, the foreign currency, goes ever higher. Soon will be at the end. And look how starving and sad they are watching those Dutch people with all their tobacco and butter and all that wonderful stuff that they can't afford. Coffee, you can see. And here's a very rare one, beautiful art. I think that's about an €80 catalog value. You can still, find some rare ones, certainly. Beautiful art. And, the Nazis would have hated this one, right? The cabaret kind of style. Here we have, I have this entire set down there if you'd like to look at that. This is from a tobacco warehouse issued in the city of Leipzig. And each note, this is actually a set of 6. And each note depicts a different way of using tobacco. So it's, don't use tobacco. Some of the series notes were overprinted and reused later with, and this is actually technically no longer a series note then. This is a trillion note. Here we have, it used to be 1 mark and then inflation came along and they overprinted it. 1 trillion, 2 trillion. So that's kind of an increase. And then, unfortunately, all good things come to an end. The series notes gave way to 1922 inflation Notgeld. That's when inflation started to really take off. They were still somewhat colorful and collectible. They could make an effort, a little bit, right? But it didn't last too long. This was a short era. There's a separate catalog just for the 1922 Notgeld by Müller. Sorry, I didn't put a picture of that in here. I should have, maybe. There's another example of 1922. We still got some good art, it's nice stuff. This one's from Biedenkopf. But then we get the hyperinflation. This is getting towards the end. We have millions, billions, and yes, even trillions of marks. This is a huge area that might never actually be cataloged. And I don't know if there is a good catalog for that, so I'm not even really going to show you the one that exists. In the Deutsches Notgeld series, it's volumes 7 and 8, but all it is an exact reprint of the catalog from the 1950s that was made, by Arnold Keller, the patron saint of Notgeld, the very first guy to issue banknote catalogs. And that catalog was not redone by Albert Pick like some of the others in the 70s. Now, here's an example. We've got a 5 trillion mark. This is issued by Henschel and Sohn. They manufactured these trains. So some of this Notgeld was issued by private companies, not just cities. And here's the highest denomination ever issued. Both of these I have downstairs. This is 100 trillion. Now, here's the thing about the numbers in German, right? Eine Million is a million, that's the same, but eine Milliarde is how you say a billion. And I think they had something similar in British English up until the 60s where they had a milliard or a million or something. But yeah, eine Milliarde is a billion. So eine Billion is a trillion. And this is tied with Zimbabwe for the highest denomination ever issued on banknotes in anywhere in the world. But these are so much rarer than those Zimbabwe ones. I mean, come on. And 100 years old. Who wants that when you could hit this? So, but you can't find it. I doubt there's even, I doubt there's even one of these for sale anywhere in the world. Here's an example of a specimen note from Stettin. As you can see, there's no serial number, 1 trillion mark. And that's really one of the wonderful things about Notgeld is you can get such crazy rarities, just amazing stuff like this, and really not spend all that much money. This might actually, this one I did spend a lot of money on. I was an exchange student very close to Wiesbaden, so this one meant a lot to me to get this. And this is probably the only one anywhere in the world. It's a 5 trillion mark specimen. As you can see, there's no serial number there on the side or anything. And it is from the city of Wiesbaden. But this is not the last kind of Notgeld. There was 1 month, December of 1923, where they issued gold mark notes. They called them gold mark, and mark isn't just a unit of currency. Mark can also be a unit of weight. And so the gold mark notes meant you got a certain unit of weight of gold, but it wasn't like the mark used to mean like a half a pound in the Middle Ages. It definitely wasn't even close to that. It was a tiny little mark at that point because you would get, here's the catalog for that. I have that, by the way. This is for the gold notes. There's an entire catalog, only 1 month about that they issued these. I'm sorry. They issued these gold notes, and yet it's still a very thick catalog with tons of notes. And this was at the very end because the mark had completely collapsed, right? Like that 100 trillion you saw, that was November of 1923. But then this one, this is December of 1923. And so in December, everything was backed by US dollars. Now it says gold mark or mark gold, as in a unit of weight of a certain amount of gold. But if you actually redeem this, you would get a US dollar that was backed by gold. And that was the logic there. So, and that was the exchange rate on all of them. It was standardized a little bit. So a lot of these were, if it was 4.2 or 4.20 mark gold, that would be $1. But some of them would be like 1.05 gold mark, and then you'd get a US order. Now, there was also a lot of silk, linen, and wood, and other types, or even aluminum foil Notgeld. There were, coins too. We'll get to that, but lots of really wild stuff. Here's some examples. Now, this one would be also in the inflation Notgeld catalog, and it is a 100 billion. There's that word I talked about, Milliarde, right? So you got 100 Milliarden, 100 billion marks. And here's a kind of an anti-American 1922 500 mark. You can see the caricatures of President Wilson there. And these Bielefeld notes, that was the one like we saw earlier from the city of Bielefeld with the smiling rutabaga. They just have crazy art, sometimes too much art. And sometimes they did stuff like this. This one it's not only silk, but it's embroidered, and it's got that turnip, or I like to say rutabaga because it sounds funnier. And are they really that different? I think also when I look at them, like the color indicates to me that it's a rutabaga, because a turnip has a different color. But that was kind of their symbol. Here's another one. This is linen. And this is, again, this would be found in the gold mark catalog, because this is, that stable value Notgeld, they called it when they went to the US dollars. I call it like gold mark or US dollar Notgeld, but they have a word in German for this, wertbeständiges Notgeld, stable value Notgeld. So that's what this is. And again, 1 gold mark was 10/42 of a US dollar, or this would have been, if they have a denomination like that where it's an even gold mark, it was not going to be an even amount of US currency that you get back. They did not want you to redeem this. You would get, that was not quite a quarter, 23 cents. I don't know, so. All right. And then there were Notgeld coins. They were also made of crazy things, sometimes even compressed coal dust or iron, or like these, porcelain. This is just kind of a mix. I just grabbed a bunch of them and took a picture, but these are from both Bitterfeld and Meissen. Those were Meissen was the biggest by far. And some of the Meissen porcelain coins were actually issued, even though they're from the city of Meissen, they were more like what we call German states issues. They were for the German state of Saxony, or Sachsen. And then we had a brief, so that was the end. I should mention, after the Wertbeständiges Notgeld, the gold and US dollar Notgeld, they actually outlawed Notgeld at the end of 1923. And the paper mark, it was worthless anyway, so it was kind of de facto the case. But they even announced that the paper mark was done. It's worth nothing unless you have like really a lot of trillions of it. And then for a certain period of time, you could trade them in. And they introduced the Rentenmark. And so that was the end of Notgeld, sad. But it did make a brief reappearance post-World War II. There's a little bit of Notgeld. And it was definitely an emergency in Germany, unlike in World War I, where the war never really came home to Germany. After the end of World War II, Germany was destroyed. And so they needed an emergency money system pretty bad. And yeah, they did use cigarettes and things, but they also had some pretty cool notes, like this guy right here. So to hoard something in German, the verb is hamstern. Like, so Notgeld collectors often call themselves hamsters. And you can see this wonderful illustration. Even though this is World War II Notgeld, this is still one of my most favorite illustrations from Notgeld, the hamster hoarding the coins. So now I just want to get a little bit further into the series notes, and then I'll let you go. But I got to get you hyped about these, because if you're going to collect one kind of Notgeld, let me just make the recommendation that you go with these, because they were designed to be collectible. So many of them are so cheap and so fun. You know, they could even be great for kids who just maybe want to spend $1, or if you want to get them something cheap and amazing. And actually, I got my first Notgeld when I was 6 years old. I still have this envelope. My grandpa had me write my name on it. He gave me some that he got from a coin club. And, you know, my handwriting is all kid-like, and it has the date on it, 1984. That now you know how old I am. And so, yeah, I still have that. That's, you know, probably some of my worst Notgeld, but still my favorite. I would never sell it because it means so much. And there's, again, that catalog for the series notes. And I just want to give you a brief warning here. Okay, so these catalogs are awesome. They have beautiful pictures, and, you know, they're all in German. There's no catalogs out there for Notgeld really in English, a few little things, but, you know, if you want to get into it, you're going to need to use the German catalogs, and there's maybe about 40 or 50 abbreviations you're going to have to learn. But once you get through those, you're golden, right? And the pictures really help. But one of the problems with this catalog is that it doesn't really tell you what constitutes a complete set. And that's the thing. I mean, about this, it's series Notgeld. It's in sets. It's in the name. But, like, for example, if you look at this one, okay, Fallersleben. It's organized by the name of the city. It was issued by the city of Fallersleben. And that one's commemorating the guy who wrote Deutschland über alles. He's right there. And the thing is, though, if you look at that, it looks like, oh, there's 3 10-pfennig notes, there's 2 25 and 250. Okay, so if I wanted to have a complete set, I'd have to have 7 notes. That's actually not true. And so these catalogs are older right here, and they will tell you something different. Now, I blew this up. This one tells you, oh, look, that's actually a set of 3. What's going on here? If we go back to that, you see there's actually just color variance, and it's not really telling you that fact that, oh, this actually is a set of 3, you know? So if you handle a ton of sets and you know, get really into it, you're just going to know this. But if you're trying to figure it out, it is a good idea maybe to have one of these catalogs like this one, which you might be able to find used. I don't know if it's even still in print. But this is a very good one. This is volume 1. Unfortunately, this guy named his publishing company KKK. I don't know what's that. And then so that's volume 1, and volume 1 is very simple. See how small this is? This is like really handy, and it doesn't have any extra information. This is like the basic stuff. It's called Grundausgaben, like fundamental basic issues. Like, this is nice, and it's cheap, and it's easy, and it will correct that problem with the other catalog. But then there's also this one. This is the one actually more people have. Like dealers will pull this one out. This is the one everyone wants to have, and this has all those the variants too. But it still tells you, oh, look, see, it's a set of 3, but it has these variants. So that's much better organized. So, you know, it doesn't have the pictures, and I'm sorry I wrote in this, but, you know, like, it's it's kind of one of those things, like, you're just gonna need so many catalogs. I'm sorry, everybody. All right, so now I'm gonna bust another myth here. Are you ready for this? A lot of people think Notgeld is not part of mainstream numismatics, but let me tell you, who invented the system that we use today for world paper money? What numbers do we use? What do they start with? What letter?
Okay.
Okay, well, there are a lot that in Notgeld that will start with K because of Arnold Keller, and he did start it first, so you know you're not wrong. But for most world paper money, you're thinking of Albert Pick, right? The German numismatist Albert Pick. And look at that. Oh, wow. He is an editor of the Keller catalog. This came out in 1975. And the copy that I have is actually signed. There's Albert Pick's signature. And so this is definitely part of mainstream numismatics. This is money. And it has a direct connection to the guy who, started the standard catalog of world paper money. So the series Notgeld, I'm just going to have a few examples to whet your appetite, and then I'll let you get out of here. All right. So we've got the August Bebel series from Glauco. There's a lot of them that had silhouettes, and the stuff that they did with, just a limited amount of color or a few plates is amazing. There are a lot of silhouette series like this, and a lot of, art historians and people like that are interested in it for that reason. Here's an interesting set, the Ettlingen set, executed by women. I've titled a lot of these, and sometimes my titles stick. So this is an interesting one. You've got, this is a tale from the Middle Ages. These cities wanted to give you like a taste of, their local history, their local flavor. Like, this is our chance in history in 1921 to tell something about our town to history, right? And they wanted you to know that these women of this convent got like 12 guys executed after they got in a fight with them. So, and the whole idea is like, don't fight with women because you're gonna lose. So Potsdam, they have a Prussian soldiers series that features all of these different types of Prussian soldiers with their sort of colloquial names. Very nice set. And these are not common at all, right? Or sorry, not rare at all. Many of these most amazing and attractive sets, the ones that you might want, the ones that you think, wow, that's the one I want, that has great art, that has history, that has everything. Well, guess what? Those were popular with collectors back in the day too. The rare ones often are the ones that maybe aren't as interesting or artistic. And so if you find something and you think, that's beautiful, I think I really want that one, it's likely that that one was, something that the people at that time felt the same way about, collected and saved the most of. And today, that set has a catalog value of €1 per note, right? So you could get that for €6, which is not much more than $6 or maybe less even. Here's a nice set on the topic of love, for example. That one is more like €2 each in the catalog. Now, those catalog values are a little outdated. The catalog I showed you was from 2010, and things go up in value and the catalogs don't keep up. But that's a complete set right there. Here's another one, Ordruf, Saint Boniface, is that what we're saying in English? Bonifatius auf Deutsch. But he's the apostle of the Germans, the one who like brought Christianity to the German people and all of that. So here we have him performing miracles and doing those kinds of things. And then there's a lot of really nice sets from that Harz Mountains region. Very famous for witches and devils and immortalized in Goethe's Faust. And, there are a number of sets there that feature witches riding goats and broomsticks. And some of them even have nudity. The Germans are kind of less prudish about that. Some of the sets are very large, like this one. From Fürstenwalde. Each of these depicts something from the city's history in a different date. And again, you see the excellent use of just minimal kind of colors. And these were made with like letterpress printing on handmade paper, which we think of today as very elegant, right? Like if you're going to have something printed elegant, you'd have raw, beautiful paper with deep impressions of the letterpress. At that time, that was considered to be like the cheap way to do it. Like, that would have been, these are cheaply made. You can feel the texture, but to us, it's beautiful now. So it's almost like even better, right? And here's, oops, went too far. Here's a beautiful set from Görlitz. And I think I really want to show you something like this after the talk yesterday, right? So here we have the 6-pointed Star of David. I'm still working on this one to for sure make sure that this is, actually Judaica, because do you see there's a wine cup in there? And this is a wine restaurant. Do you realize, even I didn't realize this at first, but the 6-pointed star is also like the symbol of brewing and alcohol in Germany. And there are places like, even during the Nazi era that had, what looks like to us the Star of David on them, that, would just have Nazis in there drinking and going crazy. And it's also called the Brauerstern, the brewer's star. And so, but this place had a lot of Jewish people living there. It's on the border with Germany and Poland and actually exists kind of in both countries today. And so I'm still working on, documenting who owned that cafe and if this was intended to be a display of Jewish pride or not. But I think it is. So here we have from Eisenach again, we've got courtly love poets, something I love. I don't know if you guys do. It's kind of, if you're into the medieval stuff, it's really wonderful. Like we have, the Walter von der Vogelweide guy sitting on a stone, right? That's his most famous poem. I sat upon a stone and I pondered that the 3 knightly virtues cannot exist in one heart, right? Because they contradict each other. You can't have worldly wealth and have the grace of God. And so these are mostly courtly love poets. There is one, though, that shows Junker Jörg, top middle. Do you know who Junker Jörg was? Anybody? Junker Jörg? That's an alias for the guy who was in the Wartburg Castle in Eisenach translating the Bible and no one was supposed to know he was there? Martin Luther, yeah. Okay, and then Münster had a very terrible episode here in the 1500s, and they wanted you to remember that. They put that on their Notgeld, right? So this is a complete set of the Anabaptist Rebellion series. The Anabaptists today we think of as the Amish and the Mennonites. But at the time, when Martin Luther translated the Bible, and people read it, they lost their minds. They thought they were in the end times. They formed all these crazy cults that just took over cities and burned things down. And this was one that took over the city of Münster. And it doesn't really bear much relation to the Amish and the Mennonites who take their inspiration from Ammon. That's where Amish comes from in Switzerland several centuries later. But yeah, it was very violently put down. And in fact, the leader of the rebellion, Jan of Leiden, and several others, they had their corpses put in a cage and left hanging from the church after this in Münster, like Munster cheese. All right, are you ready? This is the final thing here. I just wanted to tell you, there's a real reason to do this, okay? Because numismatics used to be really fun because you used to be able to find really cool stuff really cheap in your change. When I was talking to some dealers of coins, they said, in the 60s when I started dealing, I could just, look in my change that I got from the store and find amazing stuff, right? Stuff that we just can't even imagine today. You would just find it, okay? Well, Notgeld can still bring you that. You can just make amazing discoveries because there's so few people that know what they're doing with it. There's so much of it out there and so many different issues that if you have these catalogs and you master them, you can relive that experience. And I just wanted to share with you one of my greatest scores. I bought a collection one time for $150, and it was a collection of 300 notes in an album. And every single one of these was a test print. Almost all of them were uncatalogued, and they're still attached to the pages, but they are one-sided. And so it was about 300 notes altogether. I paid about 50 cents each, and I sold half of them and kept the best ones for $42,000. This is maybe one of the best pages from the album. And if I were to sell that, I would sell it for $5,000. And I paid $150 for the entire thing, probably got about $100,000 worth of stuff. So if you think Notgeld is not where the money is, you're wrong. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, please.
Did other countries like Austria issue this as well?
Yes, Austria. They have actually a really awesome new catalog that came out too. I was gonna bring that. I wanted to talk about German stuff You know, I guess just because that's what I mostly collect. And the Austrian Notgeld, it isn't quite as colorful and the paper's thin and, you know, it's not really like, doesn't have the wow factor, you know? But there is a lot of it and some of it's really good. And they do have a wonderful, wonderful catalog that doesn't have that issue with the not telling you what a complete set is. But yeah, it came out in about 2017, I think.
All right, and we can take questions from online as well. Just use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We don't have any in yet, so otherwise, in the room.
Terminology question.
Yeah,
You talked about serious Notgeld, which is
Yeah.
basically an outflow, right? How do you call a Notgeld that was used as money? Municipal Notgeld or?
the circulating Notgeld? Well, there's different, words that people use, but generally the most common is Verkehrsausgaben, which means circulating Notgeld.
No way I'm going to pronounce it. I'm sorry.
Okay, it's funny, actually, on the front of this catalog, he puts it in quotes. Verkehrsausgabe. But he also calls it, the title is Kleingeldersatz, so replacement for small change. Ersatz is a replacement, right? We use that in English sometimes, right? And Kleingeld, small change, yeah.
How is it referred to in normal law? American Numismatic Society, so to speak.
I call it circulating issues.
Okay.
Yeah, which is a direct translation of Verkehrsausgabe.
Second question.
Yeah.
The circulating Notgeld, how was it issued? Like, for example, state of Bavaria gave everybody 100 different pieces of paper, or it was exchanged for regular Reichsmarks?
That's a good question. It was different a little bit for each type of Notgeld, actually. Some of the series Notgeld, very interesting, was actually pay for workers. For example, in the Ruhr Valley, the Ruhr area, the very industrial part of Germany that was occupied by France, they called for a general strike against the French occupation. And so many of those, that's the reason why there is so much inflation Notgeld from the Ruhr area and those cities. Those were actually being used to pay the striking workers. Like that Dusseldorf one that you saw there. But then like the series Notgeld, that was like mail order mostly. And, they had them just at like the corner store, like you'd go down to the liquor store or whatever tobacco shop and you'd buy it and they'd have them in their little envelopes there and stuff. And you can still find some in those original dealer envelopes. And some of them were mail order and sent to other countries. People like the series Notgeld was marketed internationally. And the circulating notes, though, they were more issued locally, similar to how you might find a community currency issued today, where, it would be, put into circulation by like the Chamber of Commerce. Many of them are issued by the Chamber of Commerce or something like that. And they might have a little bit of a deal on it or something like that to get you to want to use it, but then hoping that, they might make a little more by collectors taking it out of circulation. And then, yeah, finally, the World War I, like the very first off, the 1914, that was just like, we need to use this, like, how are we going to get change? So people would actually go and they'd bring their marks and they'd exchange them so that they could have change. And if you were, especially if you had a business in town, you're going to need some of those. So you'd go and you'd get a stash of them and then you would deposit them. Like the 1914 Notgeld, so much of that is actually redeemed and deposited. And one crazy thing about the 1914 Notgeld is that collectors of that Notgeld specifically tend to prefer the circulated issues. It's in contrast to almost every other type of banknote.
All right, then we do have some questions online. If you're just starting out, is the 2 catalog set with photos the best option, or would you recommend a different book?
The 2 catalog set with, yeah, I mean, if you were going to get one for the series Notgeld, I would get this one. You just want to really realize that, there are some sets in there where it's not going to tell you exactly what a complete set is. And like if you tried to collect all of those color variants and make a complete set of all those, you're going to cannibalize like 10 actual complete sets or whatever, So it is nice to have something else. But yeah, if you were just going to get one and you're just starting, I would go with this. This is volumes 1 and 2. Band is volume in German, Band 1 and Band 2. Of the Deutsches Notgeld series from Goplen Verlag. And it is on Amazon. It's pretty popular.
All right. Are tools like Google Translate useful if you don't know German, or is it not accurate enough?
That's a very good question. So the thing is that Germans love abbreviations, and Google Translate is not going to work with those. So there are a number of places online or little guides that have been published to those little abbreviations, and the Germans are so bad with those because, like, for example, WZ with a little z is one thing, and WZ with a capital Z is another. And even I think what it is Wasserzeichen, what is watermark with the little z, and WZ with the capital Z is the denomination for Wertziffer. So yeah, it's very pedantic, but once you get them down, you will know them, and it's obvious from the context too. But yeah, Google Translate is not so helpful, unfortunately.
Okay, do we have anything else in the room?
If somebody were to get started in collecting this, are there certain stores that specialize in this, or is this all sort of done via eBay? Or like, how do you recommend somebody that doesn't have anything to kind of get started if they want to collect?
That's a very good question. Yeah. There's not too many stores online, that are dedicated to this. I would, yeah, probably start with eBay. That is a great place. At both the American eBay, and if you can handle it, the German eBay as well. There's an enormous amount out there. Yeah, it's kind of a minefield, and a lot of people don't know what they're doing, and it might not be their fault, but yeah. Yeah, you just kind of got to look for it. But there are, especially German dealers, who have almost everything available on any given day, at least of the common stuff, many thousands of listings, and it is out there. One thing, if you're interested in getting started, that I would just make sure to recommend is collect complete sets. Like when I sell Notgeld on eBay, I only do complete sets for the most part, because like I buy a lot of complete collections as a dealer. And so I have 30 albums of all my duplicates. And then if I buy a collection of like incomplete sets and just random notes put together, most of that just goes right into those albums, and I might complete one or two sets, but it's like it adds nothing to my collection almost, right? But if you can just get that set out of the way by buying a complete set, and boom, you've got it. That would be my one recommendation when you start. Buy complete sets. It's not hard, and if you buy like 100 notes, but they're all different, and you have no complete sets, completing those sets is going to be a nightmare. And you're just, you could keep buying and buying and buying collections like that, and you might complete one set from this collection and another one, So that's one thing, like complete sets, I feel like, and it even says in the catalog, a complete set adds to the value beyond the catalog value of what a single note would be.
All right. Okay, like you've stated, there's a lot of Notgeld available, so much so that it seems that they could be fake in this viewer's opinion. Is all or most of the Notgeld you see on eBay, for instance, real or counterfeit?
That's a great question. And actually, that's the wonderful thing about Notgeld, is that it has not been faked very much, and that's because it is so cheap. It doesn't reward, the amount of effort it would take. There are much better targets, much better, and so much of the modern notes are on very smooth paper that could easily be done on a laser type of printer or something like that. Whereas this has real texture to it. You are going to need to create multiple plates, right, and match inks and have raw handmade paper and all of those things. So yeah, most Notgeld has not been faked. It is very rare to find counterfeit Notgeld. The most common counterfeit Notgeld, I mean, there is some, and I have a collection of it, but the most common fakes that you'll find are actually worth much more. They're contemporary fakes that were made during the inflation era, when everyone was really, really poor. And in fact, that was such a wild time. That was, when Hitler's beer hall putsch was going on. And that was actually just one of many, many instances like that, where people took over local areas. And in some cases, they were called separatists. And the separatists took over the printing presses. And so some of the notes were like Separatistenscheine, separatist notes. And some of those are actually worth, 5-10 times the catalog value of the regular note. And we know which, serial numbers are those, and they're in the catalog as fakes like that.
All right, anyone else in the room?
You had mentioned that you want a set that we had printing just on one side.
Right.
It must have been a pattern, trial pattern.
Right, yeah, test notes, I guess, or what do you want to call it, yeah.
Did that happen? Did that happen very much?
A little bit, yeah. Some of the notes in that collection, like out of the 300, maybe 10 of them were in catalogs, and they had, catalog values of maybe like 100 or 200 euros, like a long time ago or something. But many of them were completely uncatalogued, but you could tell it was all from one printer company. And, I worked very hard to identify it, and I wasn't gonna do this without doing my research. And what I was able to find is that you could see that not only were they test prints, but like, for example, I showed you the Eisenach series, and I have the test prints of those. If you go back and you look at the lines, they are the finest of all of the lines I could find. Like you could tell the plates were the least worn on these test prints. So they were absolutely the first ones that were off of those plates with much more detail and fineness to the lines than the notes that came later. And you can see how they progressively wore down and became fatter lines and stuff. Yeah.
You mentioned that a lot of Notgeld wasn't cataloged. So if you see that looks like Notgeld, how can you tell it is not the catalog?
That would be a good question. Yeah, I have some Trillion notes that are uncatalogued, and I wonder about them, honestly, because it could be something made later or whatever, and you wouldn't have the information of what's the watermark or what, what's going on here. That would be tough. And the inflation catalog, like I said, the one that you can buy still today is just a straight up reprint with 1950s prices in it. And no one's ever going to be able to make another one because no one's ever going to be able to collect hundreds of thousands of those now, I think that'll be the final catalog. You never know, but yeah, and that author, Arnold Keller, he did not catalog specimens. He did not catalog serial number variants. So that catalog is itself very incomplete, as he says. He never even thought he would be able to do it before he died, but he did manage to. So yeah, that's a very good question.
All right. Have you seen any Notgeld from the city of? I'm going to let you.
Ludenscheid.
Ludenscheid.
I believe so. Let's see. I bet I can find some right now. Not at the top of my head, but I think I can remember. But with hundreds of thousands of issues. That's what's so fun about these catalogs. Ludenscheid. Yeah, here's one right here. So we've got like a cardboard coin right there, 10 Pfennig, and it's not super rare. We got a €5 catalog value on that one. That's very nice. I like those little cardboard coins. Those are neat. Good
I'm gonna
question.
show that closer to the
shit.
camera.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, right there. And James, you had a question?
Yeah, were there like different color variations on, take that one particular note there.
Yeah.
Would there be an issue that would come out in red, maybe another issue, same thing, but maybe come out with a yellow, it wouldn't come out with a brown?
Absolutely. In many cases there were, and there are a lot of variant collectors, and I think some of that was a marketing tactic even at the original time of issue. And they would be like, oh, even the city itself might charge a little more for this rarer version or something like that. That was absolutely a marketing ploy. This particular one doesn't have any, but yeah, very common thing. Yeah, you're right.
You're welcome. Have you, that's the one we already answered. Can you discuss the classic Notgeld that are very plain and just stamped with the city where they were issued?
Absolutely, yeah. So the people that collect the classic Notgeld, a lot of them actually despised some of the series Notgeld, but it didn't matter because the stuff that they had, it beat it out in the market over time and all of that. And but yeah, a lot of people who collected the original 1914 Notgeld at the time, right? When the 1921 stuff came out, they even took out advertisements saying, this isn't really Notgeld, don't buy that, this is a swindle or whatever. But the series Notgeld people just owned it. They were just like, like I should have had the picture. There's one that's very famous where it shows like a donkey pooping money. And I have translated that one. Am I allowed to swear?
That's a long question.
Okay, here we go. All right, because I have translated that, and here's what it says. It says, an ass, like a donkey, that shits ducats, like gold coins, right? That we Paderborners don't have. It's from the city of Paderborn. But there are enough asses in the world that buy our paper money. So they just owned it, right? But yeah, the 1914 stuff, that's like the purest Notgeld. That's people like who really collect that, they almost think that nothing else is the real Notgeld but that. And they want those circulated issues. They want the real thing. Many of them are military World War I type collectors. And it means a lot to them to have the actual, stuff that really went through the process of being used at that time. And I don't know that there are that many people who are really into that anymore, but it was, very much a thing. And many of those people, felt very strongly negatively about the other types of Notgeld.
Do we have any other questions in the room? All right, we'll stick with online. Would you say that the series notes were the non-circulating legal tender of their day?
Non-circulating legal tender. Well, the legal tender thing, I mean, they were designed not to circulate, right? They put them away. You wanted to save this. You wanted to keep it in good condition because this was the world's first banknote collecting craze. This was like Pokemon cards or Beanie Babies or whatever. Like you thought this was going to be worth so much. Oh boy, this stuff's so cool. Oh my God, I can't wait. I'm going to be rich. And so yeah, but the legal tender thing, it was money. Even though, it was intended for a collector's audience, there was a time, usually a window before it expired, where you could redeem it. You could take it to the local bank. There'd be certain banks that would honor it, and then the city or whoever issued it would back that. But they tried to use different means of fudging that a little bit. So they would sometimes wait until after the expiration date to get it out to the public. So even though it had been money by the time you got it, it was no longer money. There is a small class of the series notes, and some of these are the very most expensive, that are called Spendenscheine or donation notes. Eine Spende is a donation. And those were more of like a receipt for donating. We had an example of that yesterday with the League for the Protection of German Culture notes. And some of them are called Bausteine. A Baustein is a brick. And so it was like if a place was constructing a church and you donated to the construction of that church, then you would get a brick, right? Like you helped build that. And some of those are many hundreds of euros catalog, and you never see them. Some of the very rarest.
All right. Would you like to share your eBay username or anywhere people can purchase Notgeld from you?
Sure. Yeah. I'm Elkader Auction. Elkader. ELKADER auction. I'm in Elkader, Iowa, and I just start Notgeld at $1 with free shipping, and I usually have them ending on Saturdays and Sundays, and it's a lot of fun. Thank you.
Okay, do we have anything in the room? Nope, all right. What do you know about the 1923 10,000 mark coin with Minister von Stein?
Oh yeah, that one's the state, it's a German state issue. The German state of Westphalia or Westfalen. And there are a number of those all the way up to 2 trillion marks. Those are very cool. There's one down there on the floor if you want to check it out, but I guess you're in the remote thing, so you can't do that. But no, those are very cool. The Notgeld coins from the inflation era, there aren't too many of those, but with the horse motif and all of that, those are very nice. And you're correct, that is the Minister Freiherr von Stein.
All right. Let's see, we've answered a couple of these already that had come in, so I'm filtering through them. Okay, I understand that there were some Syrian China from places that don't even exist, fantasy issues that no one could ever redeem. Would you like to elaborate on those?
Yes, that's cool. You're right. In fact, yeah, there are some. There's even one listed at the end of the catalog where it just has question marks for the place of issue. And then there are some, like you're saying, that are from fictitious places. One of them is called Fuckbeck. And those northern German dialects, it looks like it's from the same printer that did all the notes from far north. And those far northern German places, that's where the people sailed over to Britain, and that's where the English Germanic the roots of English come from. So you can probably imagine what fuck in the Fuckbeck means, and Beck is like Bach, but Beck is the more northern German dialect form of that, which means like creek, so. Yeah, and it's got some weird stuff on it, but yeah, that is true, and those are really fun. I mean, series Notgeld is just tons of fun. Like I showed in that one slide, this is where the fun is. If you want the fun in numismatics, Notgeld brings it, and it's not expensive fun either.
All right. Then that is the last question we have for now. Last call here in the room. That's a no. Okay, then last call online. Send those in promptly if you have any questions remaining. Otherwise, I think that's going to wrap us up. Thank you so much, Jesse, for taking the
thank
time
you.
to do not one but two presentations for us.
Oh, this is what I love.
Okay, so we will be back at 3 o'clock with Jeff Pritchard. So I hope you will all come back and join us then. He'll be speaking about some coins from Holland. Otherwise, remember all of the presentations in this room are being recorded as part of the NNP Symposium. Those recordings will be up in about 2 to 3 weeks on the NNP as well as YouTube. If you would like to receive an email when those are released, you can sign up for our email list here at the front of the room or online on the homepage of our website. Thank you all so much for coming. Hope to see you all back at 3. And that's it for us.